jacket me.
Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Jordan and I am so excited, y'all. For the third year in a row, we are back at it for my top 10 books written by Black authors for this year, 2020. 2020 has been a ride, y'all, but we made it and we're here. And I'm just so thankful because y'all know my channel. It's always been founded on highlighting the art and the voices of those most marginalized, specifically Black people. So the fact that year after year, y'all make this the biggest video and y'all come back every time, it speaks volumes and I just love y'all for it. But off the sappy, let's get into this list. Let's get into the books that I liked and those that I loved. Let's crack this top 10. We're gonna start right now with number 10, Riot Baby by Tochi Onyebuchi. Y'all, this is a science fiction dystopian novella. Say that 3 times, a mouthful, but this book is crazy. So I don't know how Tochi was able to compact all this in a novella, but somehow he was able to, and it was mwah, mwah, chef's kiss. So this book follows 2 siblings who are Kev and Ella, and their lives are pretty much altered, you can say, on the trajectory that it would have gone if they weren't in America, which they have to deal with the effects of Black maternal health or the lack thereof, mass incarceration, police brutality, and all this other stuff. But in the midst of all of this, there's also magic involved. I loved the dystopian take of this because it was very eerily similar. Kevin himself was actually born during the Rodney King riots in Watts, and this book follows between South Central, Watts, Harlem, Rikers. It's back and forth, and it touches on a lot of true historical elements, but again, it's dystopian and science fiction embedded in it. But the dialogue is so easy and so just perfect. There was points I was actually laughing out loud. I can't believe this was Tochi's first writing of adult fiction. Blown away, highly recommend it. Coming in at number 9, y'all, is Alyssa Cole, How to Catch a Queen. I don't want to hear it. Y'all know this is Alyssa Cole, full-blown stan channel. So y'all knew there was going to be Alyssa Cole on here. Really, the hard part was leaving some of the Alyssa Cole books that I read this year off the list. I chose How to Catch a Queen. I may be biased, but I just freaking love Shanti. Like, let me talk about the book. The book follows 2 main characters, but really we invested in Shanti, who is a woman who grew up always wanting to be a queen. I loved it because she's just very ambitious. Her whole goal of being a queen was never to get swept away by a Prince Charming. Not that anything's wrong with that. Hello, this is romance. But she really wanted to become a queen because she wants to change the world. Like, she wanted to have the power to really make this impact. And she's very focused. She knows what she wants, and she's not really fazed by much. Immediately when she gets on the pages, you're like, what is up with Shanti? But this is book 1 of the Runaway Royals series. And if you're familiar with Alyssa Cole, she wrote the Reluctant Royals series. And what I loved is that the Reluctant Royals, some of the characters are within this. It doesn't mean you had to read the Reluctant Royals series, but it's nice now that that series is ended that we are getting to see some of those characters still. I told y'all Shanti always wanted to be a queen, but what happens when you finally get this dream goal of yours and you're married to someone who doesn't even want the crown, let alone doesn't seem to want to be bothered by you? You're dealing with blatant disrespect across the board. You're in a misogynistic country, a country that is just doesn't allow women to have any voice. And it's just like, this ain't what you signed up for, even though it is. And seeing her navigate that was just so interesting. Even though this was a romance, I would say the romance is actually not that hot and heavy. Like, I think they have great chemistry, but you're really focused on the characters themselves. Some of these characters, there's points where you literally want to fight them. Maybe not y'all, but there was a point where I had to put the book down and I was like, I'm going to drink water and I don't like this book because this dude's making me mad. Not the main guy, but another character. Anyways, I'm giving away too much already. I really liked the book. I finished it in a day. I couldn't put it down, but there were points that frustrated me to no ends. So Take that with what you will. If you haven't read Alyssa Cole, pick up a book from her. All right, shameless plug over. Coming in at number 8 is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. This is science fiction meets fantasy meets N.K. Jemisin's brilliant, unmatched mind. So the premise of this is the Cities series, and it's that every city has a soul. This book particularly focuses on New York and is honestly like a love letter to New York, where the city literally becomes alive. And how it becomes alive is these human avatars become the city. New York is interesting in the fact where, unlike the other cities that were mentioned in here, like Sao Paulo, Port-au-Prince, Haiti, crib, or New Orleans, New York has 5 different boroughs. So not only does the city of New York come alive, the 5 different boroughs come alive to save the city so the city doesn't fall. So you have someone literally become Manhattan, you have someone come the Bronx, someone become Brooklyn, someone become Staten Island. Like, it's just so cool to get all those different flavors and all those different things that make up New York. It has the good and the bad within it. So you have all these different cultures, all these different identities, all these different stuff, but you also have all of the negative also that you just deal with, such as xenophobia, homophobia. You have racism, clearly, gentrification, all sorts of stuff that's impacted in this, but they're trying to save their city, and it's literally action-packed. Midway through the book is really kind of when it really becomes action-packed, and it's crazy because it's humans, but it's actually the boroughs that are fighting, and your mind is trying to wrap around this other world that N.K. Jemisin created, but you're warped. And another one is all I can say for N.K. Jemisin. Coming in at number 7 is the first nonfiction on the list. Surprise. No, it's a memoir, and this one is by George M. Johnson, All Boys Aren't Blue. I thought it was a beautiful take on the beauty of being yourself and the beauty of being who you are. It is heartbreaking at times reading how George had to suppress some of the best parts literally to survive, but hopefully this helps someone else. Coming in at number 6 is Memorial Drive by Natasha Trethewey. This is another memoir, guys. A back-to-back, another memoir. Now this one, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, this one is heart-wrenching. So this one follows Natasha's life. Of course, it's a memoir, but a pivotal point in her life is when at age 19, her mother was murdered by her stepfather. So that already is, a touchy subject. And on top of that, a heartbreaking subject, especially when it appears it could have been completely preventable. It talks about how the system really failed her. And by doing that, she's telling her life story from beginning to where she's at today, and also the story of her mother and kind of how she experienced her mother and her parents as a child to now as an adult seeing it. And it's interesting because it talks in a way where, of course, well, not of course, but she's a poet. So it's very poetic at times, even though it's not poetry, but it really has you reflective on the way that you process information. As a kid, you see something a certain way, but as an adult, her learning the true facts of all what her mother was juggling, it's like she's not only discovering herself, but discovering her mother in the process. This memoir was just raw. I loved it, and it's probably one of the books, if not the book, on my top 10 that touched me the most. I got 5 on it. Hey, we in the top 5, y'all. We made it. Now y'all gonna start seeing me get physical copies out, because I think all of these books I done bought. So coming in at number 5, y'all, is Legend Born by Tracy Deonn. Now this book, shame on me. I had this for a while, y'all. I saw a few people saying it was good, but I was like, oh, okay. Child, why did I wait so long? This book is phenomenal. Okay, so Tracy Deonn, how is this her debut novel, number 1? Number 2, it's fantasy, black girl, extraordinaire, magic, amazingness. They say it's a King author retelling. It's really not. There's like influences of it, but it's so much more than that. It follows Bree, who is a teenager who recently got accepted to this like college program while she's in high school, and she's going off to it. But in the midst of this, her mother passes away or dies in a car accident. And the crash actually leaves more questions than answers, and she's trying to uncover a lot of that. And in the process, she discovers her own magic, her own ether, her own root, her own so much stuff. And some of these terms may not make sense to you, but they will when you read the book. Look at this cover and you'll already know it's about to be intense. There's action in it, there's feelings in it, and there's layers in this book. I tell you, every probably quarter of the book that you get through when you think you know how the pieces are tying out, Tracy Deonn cleverly adds another layer to the mix that takes the book up a notch. This was fantastic writing, fantastic plot. I'm in love and I can't wait for book number 2. Coming in at number 4, y'all, this book. This is another one I own, y'all. Y'all can't see it because I actually own it on audio. It's The Meaning of Mariah Carey. The book itself is phenomenal, but the audiobook, she literally is singing. And by she, I mean Mariah Carey, the legend that she is, the icon that she is, one of the greatest voices of all time, one of the best songwriters of all time. It's just perfect. She literally has 19 number 1 hits and 18 of those she wrote herself. So you already know we're getting the meaning behind those lyrics. Ever since reading it, Mariah Carey has been on nonstop for me because I'm listening to these songs that were already beautiful, but with new meaning and new ears. Her memoir was surprisingly way more than I could have imagined. I was a fan. You know, I was a fan. I'm a lamb now, y'all. I'm a lamb now. Mariah Carey has gone through so much, y'all, more than I could have imagined. Her retelling her childhood to where she's at today, to her relationships, to what she went through in the music industry, to all of that. It was a fascinating story. This is another one that might be adapted, and I would love to watch this like in a mini series or something because I did not realize how fascinating and remarkable her life was. All right, y'all. I got book number 3 in my hands right now. What do y'all think it is? Okay, coming in at number 3 is Cass by Isabel Wilkerson. This comes 10 years after The Warmth of Other Suns. Y'all should already know if I'm talking about Isabel Wilkerson, I'm going to mention this. This book over here, one of the best that I've read in the last decade. But 10 years later, she follows it up with this masterpiece, Cass. Cass is basically Isabel Wilkerson telling the origins of our discontents. No pun intended. She felt racism is just not a strong enough word to describe the structure and the foundation of what we are truly operating under within America and the real foundation of our country. She literally takes us from the country's inception all the way to where we are now, currently literally in the middle of a pandemic, to break down the structural nature of caste and not only how we operate here, but how we have influenced some other caste systems that we know throughout the world. She goes throughout the world, she studies other caste systems, and she draws those parallels to our country now, from how things are embedded in the laws, to how we operate, to how even if you remove all of the emotion from it, because we're based on this hierarchy system, how it impacts each and every one of our lives who are currently alive today. She writes in narrative nonfiction, but I feel like that doesn't even describe the way she writes because her nonfiction is more than just palatable. It's engrossing, engaging, it's storytelling at its finest. And it's the only book on my list that I read twice, or the only book this year that I've read twice, which says a lot given 2020. And I was trying to avoid this book because I didn't want to feel nothing. But it's worth it, y'all. Yeah. Y'all, we're almost there. I'm at number 2, and I'm conflicted because this was hard for me to put this at number 2. I'm surprised it's not number 1, but not really. When y'all see number 1, y'all understand. But this was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This book was so freaking good, y'all. I usually am scared to read books when they're hyped. And I hope I'm not overhyping this for y'all, but it was just that freaking good to me. So The Vanishing Half, it follows 2 sisters who are identical twin sisters who come from this light-skinned town where pretty much almost everybody in the town can pass for white. Outside of that, that's what one of the sisters does. One of the twin sisters decides to pass for white while the other sister goes on to live as a Black woman, and it follows the trajectory of their lives and the decisions that they made and how that impacts their children. So they both end up having daughters. One of them has a daughter who grows up white. She's a white girl. It shows what that looks like. And the other one ends up having a daughter who is dark skinned growing up in this light skinned town. So it touches on colorism. It touches, of course, on racism. It touches on relationships, on love, on so much, all within this almost saga, have you. And you're introduced into these others supporting characters that you literally want a whole book just for those characters. This book is character development at its finest. What I find so interesting, also, I know we just talked about cast, but a lot of times on reviews, I'll see people paint Stella as this villain almost. Like, how could she be so disgusting to, abandon her race? And it's like, how could a country force someone to have to do that just so they could literally get a job? So they could literally, have a nice house for basic things. So it's really an interesting study on what is really, the culprit in the situation. But I just love this book, and I love the romance in this book. All right, y'all. Read this if you haven't, and comment below if you have so we can keep fangirling over this. This is another one that is being adapted. They got the rights for it, and I'll be one of the first people watching it, child. Love this. Y'all, we're at number 1. All right, we came to the end. What do y'all think it is? My favorite book of 2020 that I read. Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. I read this at the beginning of the year, y'all, and my goodness, I'm so glad I did read it before March, because this came out, although this came out in the 90s, I read it in this good year. And the story, let me tell y'all about the story. It's set in the 2020s, and the series is based around, a president that kind of uprises to make America great again, and written in the 90s, y'all. Eerie, so prophetic. And it starts off with, they're in this community. It's dangerous to go outside. Everybody's inside. The world's pretty much falling apart around them and all sorts of stuff. It follows Lauren, who is the main protagonist, who is the daughter of a preacher. And when her community comes crumbling down, she's basically rebuilding her own community and her own religion from the ground up. It touches on a lot of stuff such as climate change and just, society, what happens when you take away all of these resources and all these different stuff, like what happens. And it's just fascinating. Like, I feel like Octavia Butler clearly was ahead of her time writing this, but not only that, she was basically like prophetic in a lot of the things. Like, it was crazy reading it. I just loved it. It was like perfection to me. Well, guys, that wraps up my top 10 of 2020. I would love to know if y'all read any of these books, what your thoughts are on them. Were there any of you like, what? Why did I made your list? Or any of them like, you're like, yes. I would love to know. And what were some of your favorite books of this year? I hope you guys got at least 1 or 2 recommendations to take with you into 2021. And you know what? I'm going to leave it there. Love and light. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy New Year.